Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8 to 8 is the time as you and I continue to talk about this all-important summit. We'll get probably more detail than someone who's certainly a lot closer to it than I am, and possibly many of you. I speak of Conservative MP and Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly, who joins me now. So the Prime Minister, your boss, will be taking part in this G7 meeting, Minister. How will we know that something's been achieved and it's not just a rather overinflated talking shop? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. The G7 is a really important group of political leaders of some of the biggest economies in the world. And I think that the things we're putting forward now as our presidency of the G7 are things that will really make a genuine difference. And it's going to be about how we collectively recover from the coronavirus. But the thing the Prime Minister is going to be pushing for today is that we as the international community ensure that we keep ourselves and the world safer from this virus by making sure there is a fair and appropriate distribution of vaccines around the world. That's what we're going to be focusing on.
But how do we know it achieves anything? What can we look for in the coming weeks or months? Say, yes, that all tracks back to what the Prime Minister said on that meeting on Friday. What will be the first sign, Minister?
Well, we've made this commitment. You've seen the news about our commitment to make sure that our surplus vaccines go to the international community through COVAX. That will be something that we're encouraging other countries in the world to do. And as they sign up, that will be tangible news. And ultimately, when we see those vaccines, those little glass bottles going around the world because of the decisions that the UK government has made and the conversations that we have led, that's when we will see the real difference that these meetings can make.
What time, in your view, Minister, is the right time? That is to say, should every British citizen have had both their doses? Should everyone have their first dose and then vulnerable sectors have their second dose? When would be the time to share?
Well, I'm not really able to give you that kind of certainty at the moment. As we know, the way vaccines work is that they require a certain percentage of the population to get those antibodies through the vaccine. When we assess that we have really got ahead of the problem on this, and that will be very much guided by the science, that's when we can start seeing those surplus doses distributed. Ultimately, our first priority, quite rightly, is the protection of the British people. That's what we're focusing on, and we're doing that very effectively, the vaccine rollout very, very quickly. But we also know that we, as the UK, are not really going to be safe until we have also addressed the situation internationally, which is why it's important we do both.
You talk about guided by the science, Minister. If I can move you to other areas, a country eagerly awaits the Prime Minister on Monday, as hopefully he will start to give an idea of how lockdown will be lifted or eased. Can you tell us, will all school children be going back to their schools in March, early March?
Well, frustrating though this is going to be, Nick, we're going to have to wait for the announcement. I think the Prime Minister would be rightly a little bit frustrated with me if I were to pre-announce his announcement. We have made it clear that getting children back into school is an absolute priority. You'll get more details on Monday. We are seeing the positive effects of both the restrictions and the virus, but ultimately these lockdowns have to be eased in a way which is safe. That will be how we assess what decisions are taken. But the Prime Minister and the Department for Education have made it absolutely clear that getting kids back into education is absolutely a priority.
Why do you suppose it's difficult to get through to some BAME groups regarding the vaccination, Minister?
Look, there are a load of reasons that have come together on this. It's complicated. It's concerning for me. I don't know whether I've discussed this with you on the programme before. I lost a close member of my family. I lost my cousin in Sierra Leone to coronavirus.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And I think one of the reasons why politicians and others from across the political spectrum are really calling out to Britain's Black and Asian and other ethnic communities to get the vaccine is because it does save lives. It is safe. It has been tested. We know it's effective. There is intentional disinformation, and there are inaccurate rumours floating around. And what we're all saying is get the vaccine because it will protect you, protect your family, protect your community. It's concerning. I really, really want to encourage people to take up the vaccine when offered.
Coming back to something that's very much on your brief as a Foreign Office Minister, a rather troubling headline, which you might not have seen yet, but you'll be aware of the story. Hundreds of British troops will be sent back to Iraq as part of a NATO force because of increased attacks by ISIS. How badly is the increased threat from ISIS growing, Minister?
Well, the situation in Iraq is one that is always of interest to us. I and the Foreign Secretary speak quite regularly with the Iraqi government. We have made significant progress through the international coalition against Daesh, pushing them back. They've lost physical territory, but they are still able to take part in violent attacks. We want to see Iraq a safe, stable country with a safe, stable government.
Right.
We will continue to support them to pursue that. But the threat of Daesh is significantly reduced because of our actions, but it hasn't, unfortunately, completely gone away.
Yeah, OK. How many troops are we going to send?
Well, that's not a decision for me. That will be a decision that will be made above my level in coordination with the
But presumably we're only going back as part of NATO if there are problems. We're not going back because the situation is under control, I would suggest, Minister.
Well, as I say, Daesh have shown that they are still able and willing to take part in lethal attacks. We know there are elections coming up in Iraq, and this is obviously a part of an intimidation program around that elections. We want to see those elections go ahead freely, fairly, and without intimidation. And we will continue to support both the people of Iraq and the government of Iraq whilst that country heads on its route back to safety, stability, and hopefully prosperity.
Last minute or so together, many of my listeners, as regards making the vaccine available, suggested that after the United Kingdom it should first go to members of the Commonwealth, which to me seemed a jolly good idea. Where would you be on that, Minister?
Well, we have a very, very good relationship with our Commonwealth partners, but ultimately the distribution of vaccines should be predominantly driven by medical need. That's why we've committed the vast bulk of our surplus vaccine supply to COVAX. They will distribute it as per need. And I think that is the morally right thing to do. It may well be that need is in some Commonwealth countries, certainly not all of them. There are big and wealthy countries in the Commonwealth as well as small and poor ones. But it should be distributed predominantly on need.
And lastly, a word on the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, ordering that the EU flag be flown on Scottish government buildings, despite, of course, as you will be aware, Minister, the United Kingdom having left the European Union. What would you say to Nicola Sturgeon about that decision?
I mean, it strikes me she's really not good at listening to people when they make their voices known at referenda. In 2014, the people of Scotland, by majority, said they wanted to remain part of the UK, and the people of the UK, by majority, said they wanted to leave the EU. Scotland is part of the UK. We are no longer part of the EU. That is the way the world actually is. And I think politicians really ought to deal with the world as it is rather than the world that they wish it was.
Condolences again on your loss. My best wishes to your family. Thanks for appearing on the show, Minister. Good to have you on. James Cleverly appearing here on LBC, where at 8 o'clock news is next with Thomas Watts.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Boris Johnson is set to confirm the UK will share the majority of its surplus COVID-19 vaccines with less developed countries. The Prime Minister will chair a virtual